Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining in. We'll just start the session in a few more minutes. Good afternoon, everyone, and a very warm welcome to all of you. I'm Anuja Sharma, Manager Communications at IFCCI and spoke for the IFCCI MarCom Committee. And it is my pleasure to moderate today's session. On behalf of the Indo-French Chamber of Commerce and Industry and the MarCom Committee, thank you for joining us today for the exclusive webinar on AI-powered consumer intelligence in collaboration with consumr.ai. Before we begin, just a quick note for all the participants. We encourage you to share your questions throughout the session in the chat box. We will ensure that we take them up during the end of the session. Now, to begin with, it gives me immense pleasure to invite Mr. Rajat Abhi, Chairperson of the IFCCI MarCom Committee and Vice President Marketing Schneider Electric India for his special remarks. Over to you, Rajat.
Thank you, and a very good afternoon to all of you. First of all, on behalf of the IFCCI MarCom Committee, it is my pleasure to welcome you all for today's session. Uh, as you know, the IFCCI MarCom Committee was created with a simple objective to build a strong community of marketing, brand, and communication leaders who all can come together, exchange ideas, learn something new, and really help each other in staying ahead of the curve. Over the past 2 years, the committee has rolled out series of initiatives. We had organized a webinar with Publicis Group on embracing Gen AI and how do you really embrace AI in your day-to-day routine. We had also launched a maiden Marcom Fest last year, which brought in insightful discussions on branding, communication, innovation, and knowledge sharing by some of the leading marketeers and business leaders from India. Beyond these discussions, from time to time, we have also been engaging with our fellow marketing leaders through series of initiatives where the objective is to learn something new and contribute more towards the success of our individual organizations. Now, on behalf of the committee and as the chairman of the committee, I extend my warm welcome to leaders from consumr.ai. AI, as you are aware, is something which is a must to win for all of us, especially for marketeers. And today's session is designed to help participants understand how AI is shaping consumer intelligence, market research, and strategic decision making making faster and smarter business decisions using the power of AI based insights, and also exploring some of the concepts like AI twins, synthetic audience. Now, so without further ado, I'm sure all of you would be eagerly waiting to hear more from the consumer.ai team. So I hand over the floor to the team to walk us through this webinar. And as Anuja rightly said, feel free to ask as many questions as you want to further elevate your learning. Over to the consumer AI team.
Thank you so much, Rajat, for setting the context so perfectly. Now, moving to the core of today's discussion, we are delighted to have with us two distinguished speakers from consumr.ai. I welcome Mr. Vivek Bhargava, co-founder of consumr.ai, and Ms. Jaishree Agrawal, consumer insights and strategy leader at consumr.ai. Without further ado, over to you, Vivek and Jaishree.
Thanks, Amja. Thanks, Rajat. It's a pleasure to be here. I hope we can share some knowledge which will be useful to all the participants. So what I'll do is I'll quickly share my screen. Yeah. Okay. So the way I look at it, that although we're going to talk about consumer intelligence, but Peter Diamandis just shared an article last week, and he spoke how AI is no longer delivering intelligence, but is delivering wisdom. So we believe that in the long run, there is a shift happening where AI is becoming from delivering intelligence to delivering wisdom. So what was wisdom, right? Wisdom was that our elders would see certain patterns and basically based on that patterns could predict the outcome. If a person was not exercising, not sleeping adequately, having alcohol, smoking, per se, they would live lesser than the other people, right? So that was wisdom. So what path you take, what outcome you desire, and what your outcome you'll get. So I think AI, the same thing is happening. So a little background on myself, I've basically built a company called Communicate 2 over a 15-year period with a digital marketing company. I sold it to Dentsu, which is a Japanese conglomerate. I worked in Dentsu for 8 years and built almost like 1,000 plus people team in digital marketing. 2020 is when I started Consumer.ai with three other co-founders. We raised about $4-5 million, built the platform. We currently work with mainly large Fortune 100 companies like Dell, Samsung, Avis, HP, Pfizer kind of clients in US, and in India, people like HDFC or Go, Credit kind of companies. So our vision has been very simple. We will help brands understand their customers better by using multiple platforms to deliver value and then use that understanding to improve all consumer facing decisions. So I think the challenge that the world faces is that most companies have a very little knowledge about their customers. They may know what the customer buys from them, but if you ask them what cuisine do they like wine or beer, do they like cats or dogs, this information is not known to them. So you don't have understanding of your customers. Lastly, what happens is the consumers, when they share something, they end up sharing in a way based on what perception you would like the consumer to have about you. So let's take an example. We used to do a survey in Dentsu. People said they like cooking. When you put that into our platform, it came up they like eating. Because instead of consuming recipe and cooking videos, they were consuming food videos. So generally what happens is that there is this say-do gap. People say that they want to eat healthier, but the fastest two growing categories in India in food is pizzas and fried chicken. So at the end of the day, there is this say-do gap which is there. So when we started this company, we had this vision that all these platforms have a lot of consumer data. If we can tap into the official APIs of these platforms, which we had worked with them in my experience in advertising, we can collect all this data and basically create twins of these customers. So the difference between us and most of the other people, the approach we took was that we will take deterministic logged in data. So if there are 100 people on social media, 99 of them don't share anything. So just by sentiment analysis, you get a very 1% picture of the consumer. But if you know what they're doing after logging in, if they're consuming a certain cuisine or comedy versus action or wine versus beer or cat versus dogs, you can understand the affinity of these consumers based on their behavior on social media And that's what I think makes the platform that we built very, very powerful. So obviously this was done earlier through doing surveys, or it was done now with synthetic data. It's where ChatGPT can say that, okay, you imagine yourself to be a 25-year-old male, and ChatGPT will sort of give you answers, but that's purely synthetic data. What we thought was to get the best of both the worlds, where we study human behavior, use that human behavior to create a consumer proxy, and that consumer proxy then becomes, in a way, your sounding board for decisions. I think the biggest change that I see, which is I think everybody has to be aware of, is that 25 years back, Google changed advertising. If there were 100,000 advertisers 25 years ago, today there are 10 million advertisers because Google democratized advertising. It made it much more effective. It made it almost self-serve. And because of that, today 10 million people globally are using advertising. Same thing is going to happen in the market research, consumer research industry. Today, there are probably 100,000 companies, big companies like Unilever's, Reckitt's of the world, L'Oreal's of the world in France are using market research and consumer research. But I feel now, because the cost is going down and the speed at which one can do consumer research is becoming much faster because of AI. So what Google did to advertising, AI is going to do market research. And I think every single company will start using consumer research and market research before they take decisions. And I think it's very critical that all the companies start using market research in the age of AI if they really want to get a competitive advantage over their competitors. So I think this we can skip. So basically, the way we have worked on the platform, we decided the company was very simple. We said that consumers are known by brands based on their transaction lens. What the consumer does with the brand in terms of what price they buy, what frequency they buy, what products they buy, what SKUs they buy, what color they buy, etc. But they don't know anything about the consumer, what they do outside of that relationship. So what we thought was, if we can take what people are thinking on Google, what people are doing from Meta, what people are buying from Amazon, what people are listening from Spotify, watching from YouTube, saying from blogs, LinkedIn, TikTok, Twitter, Snap, and all these 12, 13 platforms, we can actually collect all this data and create a consumer proxy of the customer. And this customer consumer proxy becomes a sounding board for all your decisions. So there is one quote of Jeff Bezos that has always inspired me. It basically says that there should be an empty chair of the customer in the boardroom, because whenever you're taking a decision, that customer has to be kept in mind when you're taking the decision. So what we've done as consumr.ai is made that chair interactive. Not only that, convert the chair into a sofa with multiple customer segments, and then given that sofa to almost every single department in the company. So right from marketing to sales to new product development to influencer selection to the media efficiencies, every single decision that an organization takes, my recommendation is they should keep some kind of consumer in front of them as a sounding board when they're taking their decisions. If they do so, they'll be able to take better consumer facing decisions and get a competitive advantage in whatever industry they are in. So I would like to now pass it on to Jaishree uh, and take this over. Yeah.
Yeah. Thank you, Vivek. Anuja, hope I'm audible. Just sharing my
Yes, we
screen.
can
Yes.
hear you.
Great. Yeah. Okay. Thank you, Vivek. Hi, everybody. Just a very quick introduction. So I come from a market research background, have been in, say, Nielsen, Kantar, and some of these companies for almost 16 years. I'm quite passionate about, finding this common space between traditional researchers and the use of AI so that, we get the best of both the worlds and none of them feels intimidated. Right now, taking on from where Vivek stopped, which is this unique partnership that we have, say, with different platforms in terms of accessing information which is privacy safe for everyone who has a logged in account into Meta and some of these platforms. What I am showing right now and will take ahead are, how are we creating these digital segments, and this is one of the interesting part. And if I get time, I would love to show you like a little bit of a quick interface to the platform also. So essentially what we're doing is, and if you see, this is based on all the logged in user data in terms of behavior, psychographic signals, life stage indicators, so on and so forth, right? So through Meta, we are able to, define the persona. So it could be, say, age, gender, city, surrogate sense of income, other meta interests that they are tagged on, etc. Now, once that persona is curated in terms of its definition, we feed it with a context and a memory, which is in terms of all kinds of Google searches and what they say and feel. This is almost like this social media analytics part, which is whatever they express on different platforms like Facebook, Insta, Reddit, Quora, snaps, blogs, articles, news, etc. Right now, imagine putting in 1,000 word plus prompt in any LLM. And then when you ask a question, you get a response from that context, which is the definition of the consumer that we've fed in, right? So through the use of LLM, we make this interactive. So once these segments are ready, we can use it to, survey and ask any question that we would like to in terms of, what are you buying, why are you buying, so on and so forth. Yeah. Now, I mean, in any use of AI, we've seen that I think trust is one of the biggest criteria to be established, because on the base of that, we're taking some business decisions, and hence we want the trust aspect to be completely established. Because in many times in some of the LLMs, we've seen that uh, you know if you ask the same question five times, every time you get a different answer, right? So hence, how do you trust that response and take some direct business decisions, or some actionability, right? So that's where traceability is something that we feel completely matters, which is how these responses have come in, what kind of signals, in what kind of reports were picked up to sort of predict the kind of response that we've seen for each consumer segment. So that's something which helps us develop the trust in the technology. Yeah. Now, this has been used in different use cases. I have two case studies that I want to showcase and show in terms of how they were used. But essentially, if I have to talk about, it is about finding the non-intuitive consumer segments. So, if I'm talking about, say, Capiva, which is my next example that I will show you, for a diet-free juice, one would imagine that I will go to a consumer cohort who's either suffering from sugar, or say at the borderline of diabetes, or a caregiver maybe of someone who's suffering from sugar. But this essentially helps us unpack maybe an audience which is beyond our intuitive understanding, which is can I position it a little more differently, and hence increase the targetable base. This helps us understanding if any particular creative is working, and also why is it working, and hence the optimization area. So you can optimize creatives campaign at a lightning speed much before we launch it. And also in terms of intent mapping. So I think let me just jump straight into, sorry, one second. Yeah. So moving on from theory to some practical use cases. First is this Capiva's growth story. Just a little bit of context. I'm going to play this video. It's an interesting video. So Capiva had this business question with us, where for their dairy-free juice, they had reached a ceiling in terms of sales, right? And the idea was to understand how they can increase it from, say, x to x plus 1 to for that percentage. And this is a space where we actually used the platform to create some consumer segments, the intended create consumer segments, based on which we've been able to get some interesting insights of how they, and which they've used in terms of positioning their creative that way. So I'm just going to play it. Hey, Anuja, if you can confirm to me, you can hear the audio. Hey, let's dive right into how
Yes, we
Capiva
can hear.
Yeah, super, great. So I'm just going to play it. Let's dive right into how Capiva completely shattered a massive growth plateau using AI. They had awesome brand awareness, right? But their diet-free juice sales literally hit a brick wall. Why? Well, their focus was just too narrow. They were only targeting folks actively managing clinical diabetes.
They kind of knew non-diabetics wanted preventive wellness, but they just couldn't pin down those hidden behavioral triggers. Traditional research, like clunky surveys, was just way too slow to capture what people actually wanted. Enter consumr.ai and their AI twins. These are synthetic personas that analyze real-time digital behaviors instantly. Basically, you build them by blending Capiva's own audience data with massive ecosystem-wide digital search intent. Then, an AI-driven scamper framework rapidly brainstormed, decoding absolute mountains of this complex behavioral data. And boom, the big breakthrough. The product had explosive potential way beyond just managing diabetes. The AI twins showed non-diabetics were actually seeking out similar products for overall metabolic wellness. By reframing their pitch, Capiva expanded their addressable market by a staggering 5 times. Just like that, a massive new wellness category was totally unlocked, shifting focus to preventative health. Forget waiting months for surveys. This AI method delivered deep, super actionable insights in mere minutes. It gives you incredible real-time speed and accuracy, though you do have to navigate platform dependencies. Now, there are limitations, like zero offline visibility, and you absolutely need large data sets for accuracy. But overall, this synthetic insight engine literally became Capiva's ultimate cheat code for scaling product innovation. So I gotta ask you, is your next massive business expansion hiding right in plain sight? Hey,
Yeah. So that was one part of it. I think the other interesting case that I would like to speak about is, how the platform has been used for a launch of a women forward insurance policy for Aditya Birla Capital. So I'm going to talk you through some 3-4 slides over here, and this is again a very interesting space where, if when we were exploring it through the platform, we understood that insurance as a space is male dominated. Even if it is meant for a woman, a male takes the decision or influences the decision in terms of what is the kind of policy that that needs to be taken. And hence there was this white space that Aditya Birla Capital was trying to explore, where if we can have a policy which is customized, dedicated to women, and hence sort of expand the market, and of course get in more user base, right? So we started with exploring their own database of women, which is across their network of mutual funds, health insurance, etc., which was uploaded onto the portal. When I say database, it's essentially email IDs and phone numbers. And based on that, now I'm just showing some very interesting nuggets and insights that came out of the platform. But of course, there's a lot of work that has gone in the background in terms of creating some right reports, creating some right consumer segments, reading them in detail, and hence sort of synthesizing the data to make a story and some sense for a recommendation for the business, right? So when we actually unpacked their own database, there were some great insights that came out. So, for example, specifically, these were women in the age of 25 to 44 with children, um, which was the main segment, and they were looking for family financial security. Now, interestingly, women in 18 to 25, who were the early jobbers, were buying policies to protect their parent. Now, when we dug deeper into it, very interestingly, these were a higher population were women in nursing, teaching, community, medical profession, etc., that emerged. They were also engaged shoppers and frequent travelers. There was this lineup of cities that we could see where there was a higher affinity for insurance, etc. Now, if you have to look at it, this data sort of helped them define certain cohorts that they could further take into research. Otherwise one would have ended up sort of talking to women 25 to 40, working, non-working, etc. Knowing that these are teachers, community services, nurses, etc., help them actually define these cohorts for further research purposes, right? Now, there were very interesting insights which were then sort of validated and reinforced through a primary research. So, for example, in case of insurance, again, a very interesting insight, which I think most of us who are working on the project and the team members sort of resonated also, where a woman feels that, tomorrow if she's not there, the question is not about survival of the family. I mean, that's where how she places insurance in the priority list in her mind. But how a male member thinks is that he needs to secure his family because that's the question of survival, right? So for her, an insurance is just a way of saving, and hence she's looking for an add-on benefit and not just a saving, right? Like a secondary income. They're looking for some add-on benefits like ovarian cancer, breast cancer, which is very specific to women needs. They're willing to wait for safer returns, etc. Now, some of the insights, when they were actually picked up, they were used for actually guiding the creative messaging. So, for example, women are looking for a language that they can understand, which is not jargonized. The sum needs to be decoded. Don't leave the math to me. A very interesting insight also came out that they spoke about how they wanted to go back and speak to the male ally in the family. It could be the partner, father, etc., and then come back and make a decision. So all these sensitive nuances were used to train their advisors in terms of talking to the women customers for convincing them to buy the policy and sort of comforting them that it's okay, go back, speak to a person you trust, and you can come back and then buy the policy. Now, all this has gone into creating a policy where after a second round of testing that was done, it came out that the communication resonated very well. It felt personal to them. The riders, which is the breast cancer cover, ovarian cancer cover, etc., were the driving factors of policy consideration. The fact that it's okay for them to go back and talk to somebody is something which was very well appreciated, because that was a very hidden need that was sort of acknowledged in a positive way and reinforced by the advisors. There was an interesting insight that came out that when they spoke about make the math simple. Women spoke about how if for an OTT subscription they are paying say an X amount, and if that's the amount that they need to pay for an insurance policy per month, it makes sense and possibly that works for them. Right. So all this has then been used to create the proposition, creative activation material for advisor training, so on and so forth. Right. So that's essentially like a little bit of how we made some real-time impact. Now this has been validated across markets, different categories, with the same common principle of observation of the behavior. I've recently done my neuro-linguistic masters, and there's a very interesting insight as a part of NLP that comes out that when a human responds, it comes from its own context, which depends on its mood, convenience, context. How am I feeling at that point in time? And hence my response is quite colored from that context, right? And hence it's far more important with this fragmented mindset that we also sort of complemented with observation behavior. So the bottom line is, of all the work that we've done across different clients, observation tracking has been the key in all the approaches. I think Vivek already covered this, which is the empty chair philosophy that we swear by. Now, there has been different use cases. I already spoke a little about it, which is creative testing, which is helping reduce the wasted media spends, as we've seen that for the Kapiva example. Discovering the non-intuitive segments, like how we could discover these teachers, community workers, etc., in the Aditya Birla Capital example that we saw. Tracking the brands, understanding shifts in mindset much earlier than what we see on ground. And understanding the mind shares within the LLMs, within the AI world that way. So I think this is largely, do we have like 5 minutes if I can use to just do a little bit of a demo, Anuja?
Yeah, sure, please go ahead.
Yeah. Sorry, 1 second. Yeah. Great. So this is our interface. So Meta shares with us Meta information for almost 1.2 million Meta interest.
Jaishree, sorry to interrupt you. We cannot see your screen.
Okay, sorry. Let me just. So 1 second. Is it visible now?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So this is a very simple interface where Meta shares with us information for almost 1.2 million Meta interest. Now, based on the third party, I mean, so for example, we could take coffee, Starbucks. What I'm showing to you right now are some runs that we had done for Netflix. So say OTT, Netflix, etc. are some of the behaviors that we could sort of explore. Now, what I'm showing to is certain reports that we've run in the background to arrive at the consumer segments, and these are pretty interesting in themselves. And I'm going to very quickly run through them, and we can spend a lot of time, after that, if it interests anybody. So what we're trying to do is people who are tagged on to see Netflix as a meta interest, what is their kind of profile, right? So you can see a split by age, gender. This is for India. From which markets do we find a higher affinity for, say, Netflix per se? And we could replicate it for any brand of interest, any brand of our choice or category of our choice. Interestingly, what other meta interests? So if you see technology, console games, entertainment, home, these are some overlapping interest areas for them. And within them, there is a sub-classification. And there is a host of other details in terms of brands they consider, work, activities engaged, so on and so forth, which is used to create a draft campaign. Now, essentially, this I showed to you was on third party. If anyone has their own customer database, we can use that also, which is the first party tab over here, to unpack the customer audience and understand them beyond the transaction lens, right? Which is the entire, host of data points that we could get out of that. Then we run like a Google report where we fed in some keywords like Netflix, streaming platforms, so on and so forth. And it tells us, it synthesizes all the kind of questions that people would have asked related to the keywords that we've fetched in, and a host of other parameters in terms of seasonality, top themes, etc. Now, the other part is the social media analytics, which is the positive, negative mentions for Netflix, best streaming apps, so on and so forth. Now, this essentially forms the memory of the digital twin or the segment that we are talking about. Now, these are certain twins that we created. Now, if you see Rahul Bhatia, this is a representation. So the beauty is we're not talking to one person. We're talking to 100,000 people, which has a similar profile. So we are talking to someone who is a Netflix loyalist, representing a age group of 30 to 40 years, stays in Delhi, what's his profile, surrogate sense of income, the devices he holds, and other meta interests that he's tagged on. Likewise, and this is Netflix loyalist, likewise, we can create profiles of, say, competition, or someone who's considering or watching multiple platforms, so on and so forth, right? Now, once these are ready, these are like your consumer cohorts sitting in front of you, and you can actually use any question to sort of get a response. And as I told you in my earlier some of the slides, we can trace back the responses to see what kind of signals were picked up to get the responses that we got, right? While this is there, the way this has been used are in terms of different approaches that we have, which is, for example, say group meetings, say one-on meetings, etc. So we did this brainstorming where we wanted to understand viewing habits influencing subscription plans in different tier choices, right? So we took these, 2, 3 sort of twin segments, and we got responses, which, if you see, this is the summary part of it. Now, there's this interesting feature I would want to show, which is the creative evaluation, where we picked up this one creative, we exposed it to the twins, and we get this post-assessing, getting a response from them on some standard, on some questions that we have scripted and which can be customized. We've got this 1-number score basis how they rate on, say, resonance, personally relevant, appeal, and there is this 1-number score. There is a detailed transcript of the responses that they have given, which, if you see, yeah, so they were like a host of questions that we asked them in terms of what did they like, dislike, etc. And the platform throws a very quick summary of the top likes, top dislikes, key takeaway plans and action based on these likes and dislike, right? Now, there's this optional feature, which is generate variation, which takes into account some of the likes, dislikes, and sort of suggests certain edits. Now, it's just an option. Sometimes it helps creative teams to further see what are the kind of ways in which this could have visualized. And it's something that they can decide to use, not use, or pick up some learnings and sort of use it that way, right? So this essentially is how the platform works, and there's much more of how we could use the platform. But in the meantime, I think just wanted to park us over here, and yeah, open to any questions if the team has.
Thank you so much, Jaishree and Vivek, for that insightful presentation. We now move into the Q&A session. So I see we've already received a few interesting questions from the participants. So I will just read them out for you, Vivek and Jaishree, and I would request you to address them one by one. So we have a question from a participant asking, with the data security laws becoming stringent, data collection will become a challenge. How do you see that impacting the platform?
Yeah, actually, one great thing about our platform is from day one, we actually were very clear that privacy will become important. So our platform is GDPR, CCP compliant. So even before DPDP came in India, our platform was already compliant. We don't do anything which is individual based. Everything is done on a cohort basis. So these twins are created based on lookalike audience that Meta offers. So what happens is it tells you that okay, these 100,000 people, these 20,000 people, these 500,000 people like dogs more than cats. They like Korean cuisine versus Italian cuisine. They like comedy versus action. So there is no personal information about the consumer that's collected or shared. These twins are basically representing a consumer proxy, and they can answer questions based on their affinities, which are very generic, large affinity across 1.2 million interests of Meta. So it talks about specific affinities. These affinities can be brands, these affinities can be genre, these affinities can be a sport, this can be a sports person. But it's not about that what Anuja and Vivek are doing. So it's done on a cohort level. So it's completely privacy safe. It meets all the norms of privacy. And I think that's the biggest advantage we have on this platform.
Great. Thank you so much, Vivek, for answering that. We have another question. I think more also you've answered that question already, but I'll still ask because there's an additional question to that. What are AI twins? Can you also cite instances of B2B cases? B2C, though competitive, is sometimes easy to penetrate.
Yeah. So the AI twins are nothing but a consumer proxy based on actual human behavior. So what they sort of think from Google, what they do from Meta, what they buy from Amazon, what they listen from Spotify, what they watch from YouTube, this is all done on a cohort basis. So these cohorts are then used. So when you take consumption on Meta, it becomes a consumer twin. When you take consumption on LinkedIn, it becomes a pro twin. The pro twins are used for B2B industries. So we can create twins of specific designations. And then based on that, you can ask them questions. You can take, so we work with healthcare industry. So most of our customers are large enterprises. So we work with people like HP, Samsung, Pfizer, Avis, New York Life, Vanguard. So all the large customers that we have, a lot of them are B2B customers also, where they're using our feature called Pro Twins, which are created through LinkedIn, and that's what the B2B industry uses. But I think the twins are stronger in the B2C sector. Uh, but yeah, some of our customers who are, let's say, IT companies can create IT procurement officers twins, and then you can use that to sort of query what an IT procurement officer would do, what a doctor would do, or what a professional would do.
Great, thank you. Moving on to the third question. A part of consumer pattern, can such AI tech use for political or any community organization to make decision for public policies where they can evaluate possibilities to increase their appealing?
Absolutely. So I tell you what we've done is we want to avoid the elections part of it, but we already in process of working with certain governments. I'll give you an example. Tony Blair Foundation of Global Change works with 35 governments. So our goal with them is we create citizen twins. So these are twins of entrepreneurs, twins of retirees, twins of women entrepreneurs, etc. And what we do is we will actually query the twins that what are the policies they would desire that will change their life for the better. Then what would happen is we would implement that policy, and the twins refresh every week. So after 3 months, after 2 months, after 1 week, as the policy gets implemented, you can again query the twins if the policy has an impact. So if the government gets 4 to 5 year period, they can implement policy, measure impact, make changes to the policy, implement a new policy, and this life cycle of actually every 3 months seeing the impact of the policy can have a compounding effect on these policies. We haven't started working with them as yet, but in this discussion phase right now. But it's a great use case how our twins can be used to actually improve uh, basically citizens' lives.
Great. Thank you so much, Vivek. We'll just quickly take two more questions. So, which area of consumer intelligence is currently most underutilized by organizations despite having significant potential?
I think if you ask me, just the consumer intelligence or consumer research market research itself is very underutilized. So generally what happens is people take decisions without actually understanding what the consumer desires. So the thing is, if you ask me, just imagine, right, the total industry of advertising is almost $1 trillion. The total industry of market research is 1/20th of that. That means just imagine you don't know what the consumer wants, but without knowing that, you're trying to sell that something to that consumer. So basically, if you ask me, if you knew what the consumer desired and the consumer actually wanted, you could communicate that and the consumer to buy from you, probably spending 1/10 of that on advertising. So basically, if you ask me, hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars are being wasted because people are reaching out to consumers without actually understanding what they desire.
Great. Thank you so much, Vivek. Lastly, if you had to describe the future of consumer intelligence in one sentence, what would it be?
Consumer wisdom. Basically, we should be able to predict outcomes based on human behavior. And that is what I think the future is. That how do you move from intelligence to wisdom?
Great. Thank you so much, Vivek and Jaishree. So, as we come to the close of today's session, a big thank you once again to both the speakers. With that, I would now like to invite Ms. Rishika Roy, Deputy Director, Northern Chapter, IFCCI, for the closing remarks. Over to you, Rishika.
Thank you so much, Anuja, and thank you to everyone. Good afternoon. I would like to extend my sincere gratitude to all esteemed speakers, Jaishree and Vivek. This has been really insightful, and thank you for sharing so much information, which was quite modern, innovative, something which we are really trying to infuse, especially this is the year of innovation between India and France. So I think our members must have really enjoyed this. And thank you for patiently answering all the questions. Also, a big thanks to the members of the IFCCI MarCom Committee for joining us, like each time. A special note of appreciation to our committee chairs, Rajat Abi, CMO Schneider Electric, and our vice chair, Nikita. Nikita, thank you for introducing us to consumer AI. And of course, our committee spokes Anuja and Kinjal Kini for putting this event together. Last but not the least, the IFCCI MarCom Committee annual patron, Sopra Banking Services. Thank you for your support, and I wish you all a pleasant evening and look forward to welcoming you at our future events. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Rishika. So, with here, we would like to conclude the session. Thank you, everyone, for joining in. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Bye bye.
Bye bye.